Well, hello everyone. Ogre27 Kane here today, and I want to do my top 10 favorite horror games for the Nintendo Switch. Now, before we start out, I have to give a little caveat. This collection does not include Resident Evil Revelations 1 or 2, as they would not capture with my new method, and frankly I didn't want to go back to my old one for them, so they are excluded from this list. But there's still 10 great horror games, and I hope you can find one you can enjoy out of this. So let's start out with number 10.
Resident Evil 6.
Well, it's still a Resident Evil game, and that will still classify it as horror. But this game is almost about as far away from horror as you can get. It's pure action. I guess the elements of blood and gore everywhere and really crazy and grotesque monsters are what give it this designation, but it's not really a horror game. It is still a really fun game, and it's a great multiplayer game, especially for the Nintendo Switch. So I do recommend checking it out. I had a lot of fun with it. The campaigns are pretty short, about 5-6 hours apiece, and there's 2 or 3 of them that are actually fun and worth playing. But other than that, the game is still a Resident Evil game and deserving of the title, even if very loosely fitting. The campaign footage you're seeing here is from Chris's campaign, which to me is a lot of fun. I kind of really enjoyed this one. But Leon's campaign is, in my opinion, the best. And his campaign is the first one you start out with. After that, it kind of just goes into a run and gun shooter, blow everything up. There's not even a consequence for death in this game, so enjoy it. Let's move on now. Number 9, The Persistence. Now this game I've covered on my channel already in a review, and this game starts out very much a horror game. You're very underpowered, you have to sneak around a lot, the monsters are very overpowered. But by about the 5-hour mark or so, you become a god almost, and you just run around and rage and destroy everything. So it technically fits in the category of horror. It's also a roguelike if you like those kind of games as well. But it loses that element some ways through the game, which is why it's at number 9 on this list. It's not a bad game, it's still a lot of fun, I really enjoyed it. But at a certain point, the horror and the stealth element go away, and it just becomes a different kind of game. Now, one of the coolest elements about this game is the weapons. The weapons in this game are a lot of fun. As you can see, I've shown a few of them off here, and my favorite one is by far that little handsaw that rotates in your hand. It allows you to teleport across the room and kill just about any enemy in the game with one hit, especially after you've upgraded your character. You buy a couple of these or find a shop for one of these early on in the game, and you're pretty much set. You can make it most of the way through most of the obstacles in it. There are a few set pieces in the game that require you to use specific weapons, and those are always difficult because they're limited to what they have. But the rest of the game is totally manageable with what they allow your character to do. So I think we should move on to the next game now. Number 8, Resident Evil 0. Now, when this game came out originally for the GameCube back in the day, I was super hyped for it. I'm one of those people that actually bought the Resident Evil remake and Resident Evil 0 on launch for the GameCube. I'm one of that very few 35 million people that enjoyed that generation, and this game was a sight to behold. Now, the mechanics in this game are really wonky and not the best. This is why it's very limited on the scope of Resident Evils, in my opinion. It ranks it really low simply out of mechanics alone. The gameplay in this is absolutely a blast. It plays just like Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. And in some of the settings allows you to have some really tense and fun moments with it. But because of the inventory system and the way you manage between both characters, You get pretty annoyed early on, and it's really a struggle to make it to the end of this game. If you do make it to the end of this game, it has some really fun endgame fights, and the end area is pretty spooky as well. This game is complete horror though. The enemies and everything in it will scare you all the way through it, and it deserves its spot on this list. So, I highly recommend it. Check it out. Let's move on now. Number 7. Outbreak: Contagious Memories. So this game is made by Dead Drop Studios. I know nothing about them, I've never seen or heard of them. I found this game when I was researching other games like Resident Evil and Tormented Souls and a few of those, and I came across it. Now, this game is a guilty pleasure. There is nothing really redeeming or good about the gameplay in this. It doesn't do anything better or special on those other games or on the genre as a whole. This game is literally about just playing another zombie game after you get done with one of those and you need the fix. The mechanics in this game are really wonky. Some enemies take 20 shots to kill, and then you go right back and they take 3 shots on your next playthrough. None of this really makes sense. But for some reason it's really fun, and I really enjoy the game and I keep playing it. The other cool thing is there's lots of options to adjust, and you can adjust it more towards performance or fidelity if that's your preference. I highly recommend performance though in this game because it still seems to get a little gross even with the performance mode on. The reason this game is listed higher than Resident Evil 0 is simply out of the fact that the management and inventory system in this game is a lot better. Simply having a box that you can drop all your stuff off and come back to is a godsend. So let's move on to number 6 now, Signalus. Well, once again, this game got a review on my channel, and I recommend checking that out because this game is a lot of fun. This game snuck up on me. I knew nothing about it. I didn't have any research, no information. I didn't even see any little video showing previews. It just popped up one day. And I'm grateful it did, because this game has turned out to be a lot of fun. It's based kind of like a PS1 game almost, with very, very loose 32-bit pixel art. But the gameplay ends up being a lot of fun, and the puzzles are a blast. The story on top of that is a good part of this game. So, if you need a good throwback to that generation, a good callback, this is the game to check out. And it will kind of pull you in different ways with it, the way it portrays its emotions. So, here's a scene that might get you. Number 5, Onimusha Warlords. So first up, I know a lot of people will not consider this game to be a horror game, but for me it was. I played this game as a teenager, and the first time you run up on that first big demon boss, it scares the living crap out of you. There's not much else you can say about it. Some of the other bosses in this game will freak you out too. This game was a lot of fun, and it was made by the same people that made the Resident Evil games. This is essentially Resident Evil in feudal Japan. Has the exact same tank control scheme, has a lot of the same elements, and has a lot of the same enemy placement as well, designed specifically to scare you. So I know I'm probably going to get some controversy over this game, and if there's any game on this list that most people say doesn't deserve here, it will probably be this one. But for me, this game is a horror game through and through, and even to this day, when I play it back, I still run into some of those enemies and get a little bit tense. It's kind of crazy how you can develop an emotional memory to some things, and they can train your brain to think a certain way. Now, I do want to mention, I do have a physical copy of this game from Japan, and it does have full English voice acting and text, so it's totally worth buying it. This game also has some great improvements to the control schemes. So, let's move on now. number 4.
Resident Evil 5.
So Resident Evil 5 to me is the epitome of the best form of multiplayer you can put into a Resident Evil game. I enjoyed this game through with one of my good friends. Shout out to my homie Roger if you're watching this. This was definitely the game that turned me on to multiplayer games as a whole. I really enjoyed the experience playing this game through with somebody else, but at the same time it kind of takes some of the edge and the element and the horror away from it. Playing this game alone by yourself in the room in the dark is a little bit scary, but when you got somebody that you know and you can trust that's literally going to revive you every time you fall, it makes the game a little less intimidating. That doesn't take away from how fun this game is, and some of the boss fights are really engaging too. I like the fact that they make you work as a team. Now, the AI in this game is, a little rough, but it's manageable and you can definitely get through it. They don't make the game too hard to play. But having another human on top of it really makes you force the difficulty and push the game up, ramp it up a notch. So if you enjoy a good Resident Evil game and you need a multiplayer experience, this is the best one to play in my opinion. Check it out. Number 3, Tormented Souls. And I have a special guest appearance with me on this. Well, Dovahkiin, I want you to share with me, why is this your favorite horror game?
This is my favorite horror game because I love the gameplay and the story. I played it through 3 times already. And my favorite part is when she finds out when she cuts her own eye out. That part is just, I love that part. I don't know why.
Was there any certain part that scared you the most?
Definitely the part when just a random body pops out of a cabinet and you're in the basement.
Was there any enemy that scared you the most?
Oh, the Atomic Men.
The Atomic Men got me too, especially with that intimidating light when they come alive.
Mm-hmm.
What about these berserkers?
They're pretty scary, but not as scary as the Atomic Men.
After you've seen a couple of them, you kinda stop worrying as much, huh?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dovahkiin. I really appreciate all your input on this. It's been a blast enjoying this game with you.
Thanks, see y'all later.
Well, this game was kind of a sleeper hit for both of us. I bought this game on a whim, once again, and it turned out that not only was it a blast for me, but my daughter actually likes this game more than I do. And that actually kind of makes the game more valuable to me than anything I would have gotten out of it. So, let's move on now to the next one. Well, the number 2 on our list is Resident Evil Remake. And this game is something of a mixed bag for me. Because I really enjoy all the graphical overhaul and remake and new campaign and setting and new enemies, monsters, bosses, and everything else they did to it. But something about the original still has me hooked. My favorite Resident Evil game is Resident Evil DS. That's right, Resident Evil DS. I think that is the best remake that they've done. Somehow they managed to keep the charm of the original game intact with that version. Not saying this one doesn't have it. As you see here, it has a lot of the same scenes and set pieces and everything else. And the game actually has a little bit more horror to it, as the monsters are a little bigger and more intimidating. Now, I think one of the biggest key factors for me is that they replaced a lot of the B-rate horror with some really good voice acting, and that was the charm for me, I think. I really enjoy the B-rate nature of it. So, let's move on to our next one, and our number 1 spot. Well, this number 1 is very well deserving in my opinion. Resident Evil 4 is a blast no matter how you play it, whether you play the remake or whether you play the original, whether you play it on the GameCube, PS2, Wii, PS4, Switch, it doesn't matter. This game is a gem no matter where you play it. I love playing it on the Switch and the Wii in particular because of the gyro controls and the motion controls, but the game still works really well with the joystick, and the game is a lot of fun. There's so much to do and so much to keep you involved with in this game that there's no way that you can just play it once and put it down. Resident Evil 4 will always go down in history as one of my favorite horror games, if not favorite video games, to ever play. And I go back and I play this game every year around Halloween time. Doing this video really made me want to play this game again, and it might show up in a Game of the Week very soon. So, with all that being said, let's get this out of the way. I really enjoyed making this video. Thank you for watching today's video. It was a blast to make. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day. This is Ogre27 Kane, signing out.